Hi, my name is Nika Metroveli and I'm the host of the podcast 14 Questions. Here, we believe that humans are the best source of knowledge. Second episode's guest was Scott Stewart, an established leader, a veteran, and project manager, currently teaching in LCC International University leadership classes. Our podcast was very interesting and super knowledgeable. I would divide it into three sections. Where in introduction we talked more about his subjective opinions about life and all the good stuff. And also in the middle, we kind of touched more about leadership. And in the end, I asked all the suggested questions that I got beforehand. It's in a speed up format. He just gave like one sentence answers because we had a time limit. Thank you all and hope you will enjoy. Thank you everyone for joining. Today is the second episode of our podcast 14 Questions and our guest is Mr. Scott Stewart. Thank you for being here, Mr. Scott. How are you doing?
I am platinum. Thank you for asking. I appreciate the invitation. How are you holding up today?
I'm doing very well and I'm actually super pumped to hear answers you have to give me on my 14 questions. It's very exciting.
Just remember the old idiom, be careful what you ask for. You just may get it.
Yeah, you are very popular pre-recording. You got 19 suggested questions and I will make sure to ask all the good ones in the end.
Roger that.
All right, let's begin. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your biography?
Well, I'm from Southern California, a place called Rialto, California, right outside what is now considered the murder capital of California, San Bernardino.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not the same place that I grew up. When I was 18 years old, I joined the United States Air Force, which was probably one of the best decisions that I could have made because I was going nowhere quickly. Spent 25 years inside the United States Air Force, 24 of which were being stationed overseas, 2 years in Greece, 22 years in Germany, deployments, you name it. And when I retired in 2013, I already had, good God, 3 technical degrees, 2 professional certifications, a master's degree. And it was after my master's that I started my doc. I'm extremely fortunate to have the most patient woman in the world as my wife. I got a 23-year-old son who's an amazing football player, 2 girls that are small and lovingly test my patience every day because they're cool like that. When I first retired, started working for Amazon. If you ever get a chance to do that, go ahead and pass on that. And then started working for another university in the United States. And in 2016, decided that it was time for a change of scenery for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. Been at LCC since 2017. Couldn't be happier.
You worked in Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
What did you do there?
Oh, that's right. We're recording, so I have to choose my words carefully. I was what they called a picker. That's not what I would call it. Mm-hmm. My inner thought, outer thought switch is working pretty well today. That was the most ridiculous job known to man. That place was such a train wreck to the point where I canceled my Amazon accounts. Just you're racing against this ridiculous blue line. And there's no logistical sense to how they store stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can literally pull one item and then the next item you have to pull is the same item, but it's a quarter of a mile away. So you've got this silly scanner and you're racing against this blue line that's going down faster and faster and faster. And if you don't make rate, they escort you out of the place. It was ridiculous. I literally saw people pass out.
Wow. Yeah, these type of jobs are the hardest because it's nonstop, right? It's coming. You better be there.
Yeah, and what's even worse than that is one of the challenges is because there was a theft issue. I worked in the largest fulfillment center in all of Amazon in the United States.
Mhm.
It was ridiculous. This thing was massive. And to get into the place, you had to go through a metal detector, and there were these people that I think they were supposed to be security guards. Me being a military guy, I just looked at them and went. But to get in and out, there was these choke points. And if you had a 30-minute lunch, that became an 18-minute lunch because you had to process in and out. And if you were late, forget about it. Pack your gear.
I see. Yeah, well, I don't think a lot of people know that you worked in Amazon. It's good.
Oh my goodness. You got to put food on the table some ways.
Yeah. We all begin somewhere.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to hot questions now.
Okay, let's get after it.
All right. If you could offer a newborn child only one piece of advice and they would remember it their whole life, what would it be?
Integrity matters. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, integrity matters. What you do when people watch you or when they don't watch you defines who you are as a person and is the foundation for your character. And I would have no reservation saying that to a newborn child and reiterating it through their life. I know that sounds sort of cliche, but how many people get lost in making bad decisions? They get caught up in a perspective of, nobody's watching, maybe I can get away with this.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they don't realize it, but somebody did watch them. And that person was looking for that example. And you just gave them you gave them an excuse to do something wrong. If your life is grounded in integrity and there's a set of values and ethical code that you live by, it becomes part of who you are. Then you don't have to worry about if somebody's watching or not, because you're authentic to yourself. So integrity matters. Hold on to that. Hold on to that like it's your last dying breath, because that'll define you.
All right. Actually, for the audience, can you please define integrity?
Integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody is watching. It's an internal value where you've recognized that your life is committed to a higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the codified requirements are, that you take those values and you make them part of who you are. So it doesn't matter if you're alone and you get to that tough decision point, your integrity will drive you to do the right thing, because at the end of the day, you still have to look yourself in the mirror, and you don't want to have any reservations about that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned that it's about what you do when you're alone, because it's a motivation for us to do some things in front of people.
Yep.
Usually. Unfortunately. I would say unfortunately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a really good way to put it. Unfortunately, and this is going to sound super bad, but I'm going to say it. When you start assigning value based on other people telling you that you're worth something, you've lost your life center.
Mm-hmm.
I look at all these people, and there's a lot of good people who will make a bad decision, and I get that. We're human. There's times that I make what I will call a jackass decision.
Yeah.
But I still got to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And people become apologetic about who they are. If you have integrity and that drives you and it creates that discipline to do the right thing, you can be unapologetic. And it is such a liberating lifestyle. It's ridiculous.
Are you living up to that advice?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. To say that I don't fail would be a bold-faced lie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lack of accountability with that. I'm human. But when I slip up, the first thing I do is I own it, and I own it outright. And then I try to set up things that prevent me from doing it a second time. And I've been successful, but life throws you curves.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a curve that you haven't seen before, it's like playing baseball or being a goalkeeper. You're a goalkeeper and you're set up and you're trying to adjust where the ball's coming from. And you got a new player out there that kicks the ball in just a crazy way. And you don't see it coming a certain way. You don't see the movement on it. Sometimes the ball gets behind you, but you learn from it and you learn to adjust. Next time you see that, you know how to block it.
Yeah. Wow. Integrity. You better keep it in mind.
Roger that.
All right. Okay, that's actually, I'm excited for this question. I think a lot of people are waiting for it. All right. So if you are an employer and you're employing a person, what kind of personal characteristics would you look for?
In what context? And the reason that I ask that is because every organization is different. So what tends to happen is when people get recruited, there's a misunderstanding of that recruiting process. So, you know, what the standards are for somebody who's in the military is different than somebody who works at Amazon or somebody who works for LCC. If I'm looking for general characteristics, the first thing is integrity, that I should be able to trust them. Second one is dedication. The willingness to commit to a set of organizational values and push through different kinds of changes. Honesty, man, oh man, oh man. I do not like trying to pull out information like it's some sort of top secret classified document. So with honesty comes integrity, candor, and what I will call thoughtful dissent. Thoughtful dissent is based on the principle that you care about the organization and you will be direct with somebody and say, this is the situation as I see it. This is where I think that there's a problem. Here are my solutions. Intelligence. And when I say intelligence, I don't mean that in just the book smart. I mean it from a perspective of you can understand something and you can contextualize it and apply it. So,
yeah.
Honestly, I'm not a big experience guy. You don't have to have experience, but if you show me what you can do, that's something I can work with.
Okay.
Oh, and respect. Sorry.
Respect.
Had to tuck that one in.
Respect.
Respect for yourself, respect for the people around you, and respect for the organization and something higher than yourself.
Roger that, as you say. Roger that. Respect is a huge thing. Okay. If you could ask a person one question with a goal to know about him or her as much as possible, what question would you ask?
What do you stand for? And the reason that I would do that is because if somebody cannot define what they stand for, it puts into question what they will do when times get tough. Somebody can tell me that they stand for something that I don't agree with, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we can agree to disagree and walk away. But if somebody cannot articulate what they stand for, that means that it suggests that they don't trust themselves or they don't know themselves well enough to be able to say that openly.
Well, I have to ask you this question. What do you stand for, Mr. Scott?
Integrity, family, duty, courage, honor, service before self, integrity first, and excellence in all I do.
You got it. That was smooth.
Thank you.
That was good. All right. Okay, I'm interested in this question. If happiness was a national currency, what kind of job would make you rich?
Honestly, if happiness was a national currency, I think it would be a worthless currency. And the reason that I say that is happiness relies on somebody else giving me some sort of props or some sort of recognition. If joy was a currency,
joy.
And I get the happiness thing because happiness should be part of joy. I think happiness is more reflexive because it does require that outside input. But to answer your question, I'm loving what I'm doing right now. I know it sounds silly.
It does not though.
But I had a great boss that when I first got into teaching, it was in the military. And the guy looked at me and said, you're going to have an ocean of faces that will at times blur to you. And we had small class sizes, 15 to 18. He said, you're going to have 15 to 18 different people just in your class. You're going to have 100 different people that you interact with every 5 weeks. He said, your measurement comes in the successful number of 1. If you've given 100% and you were able to present one concept for one person to consider that they may later in life change to something better, you are successful. And since that has redefined my perspective on a ton of different things. So, I mean, what better opportunity to try and touch one? LCC.
Yeah. Wow. Can you please go back to that happiness and joy difference and briefly tell me what is the difference between happiness and joy?
This is sort of an ongoing debate. From my personal perspective, happiness is something that is reactionary to external influences, whereas joy is something that is internal. It's like that internal fire. I mean, you were in my class, and I know that I had shared this one, so I'll drop this one out there for you. In 2012, I had contracted a disease that almost killed me. Like, quite literally, I was in the intensive care where they had this massive needle down my artery, and they were trying to wash my blood because this disease kills you. There's no cure for it. It either runs its course and you live or you die. That's pretty much it. It's a binary situation. And so when they told me, hey, this is the last thing, if this doesn't work, you're checking out. And it was, I mean, I had always had that perspective before, but that one was something that solidified it for me. Every day you wake up, man, is a chance to get it right. And there are going to be bumps, there's going to be turbulence. But from my perspective, joy is something that's intrinsic, something that's internal that you create. So you can assign your value sets differently or apply them differently when it starts on the inside. Goes back to that whole discussion about not being apologetic.
I see.
You can live authentically.
Interesting. It would be interesting to know, to ask ourselves what is joy for us, right?
Yeah. Like, what gets you out of bed? What gets you out of bed in the morning when you just had a bad night and you know that you got trash waiting for you? What gets you out of bed?
Yeah, we need to think about that for sure. Okay, let's move on, baby, a little bit more about leadership and project management.
All right.
This is your field.
Sort of. At least I've been told.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay. How do you handle underperforming team members?
It depends on the person and the context. What tends to happen is in leadership, they try to sell you something. And I know that sounds terrible. There are so many different theories out there, but it all starts with knowing who your people are. And you have to apply leadership principles and behaviors in context to the person and the situation. The way I would handle somebody who's underperforming in the military is different than I would handle somebody who's underperforming in a class. Because the constraints, the environments, the expectations are drastically different. If somebody is underperforming and I as a leader don't engage them, then I'm failing.
What do you mean engage them?
Engage means to interact directly with them in the setting to where it's non-threatening and we can have the open conversation. Typically, when people are underperforming, there's a series of situations or a series of choices that took place to put them in that position. The standard doesn't flex. The standard is that minimum level of acceptable behavior. To do what I call fire and forget, you did something wrong, I'm going to hammer you. Next person, let the beatings continue until morale improves. That has nothing to do with the reality of productivity and success. If you're a truly engaged leader and somebody's underperforming and you do not go and talk to them and take the time, because leadership is time intensive. for all the right reasons. To help people dissect the situation and find out what that root cause is so that you can evaluate what created it and help them build in mechanisms that prevent them from doing that and become more resilient. You might as well turn it in because you're not really leading, you're managing.
Who is a leader?
There's a lot of people that are out there that are leaders, and leaders are also imperfect. If you were to ask me the two greatest leaders that have had influence in my life, I would have to tell you that there are three. The first one is Colonel Suzanne Kumashiro, U.S. Air Force retired. How many people do you know who beat cancer and then go run a marathon? She was amazing. I literally would have jumped on a grenade for her. Mm-hmm. She taught me the art of being diplomatic when you're not a diplomatic person. So she was extremely good at that. Another leader that I would follow off the edge, like a lemming running off of a cliff, is my best friend and my two-man John Mitchell. He's a retired master sergeant, and at one time he and I were labeled the two most dangerous men in Europe by these different organizations that we were inspecting. And he is the smartest person that I've ever met. And I say that wide open. He was exceptional at the way that he could go back and forth and play both sides of a coin and have somebody walk away thinking it was their idea. And he would just sit back and say, you know what, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what gets done or what it. His biggest thing is, if you want things done, don't care about who gets credit.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's extremely interesting. I mean, I felt like from my own observations that leadership, when you are a leader, if you are egoistic about getting a credit, then you're going in the wrong direction.
I could not agree more. The other guy is a retired chief master sergeant by the name of John Mitchell. I'm sorry, not John Mitchell, Mike Sullivan. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the best examples of integrity that I've ever seen. He faced absolutely terrible situations while he was in uniform, and he stood by what was important, and he rose to the highest enlisted rank. And he took a chance on me when I probably didn't deserve it. And he's the one that said, just get one. And then, of course, when I got promoted, he said, now you have to find 5 people to replace you and commit your efforts to that. I'm like, really? Are you trying to kill me, Chief? So you see a lot of leaders that are out there that do amazing things. And we got leaders that walk inside this hallway, mm-hmm. Inside LCC, they just don't recognize it yet.
Yeah.
Because what they did is they made a stand for something that they knew was right in the face of opposition. That's one of the foundational characteristics of good leaders, making a stand when it's unpopular, but you know it's right. So.
Okay. So there's a huge interplay between being a good leader and having integrity and being humble type of.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but nowadays media and world does not show leader like that. The image is different. Image is like some kind of guy in a suit, I don't know, having a panorama view in front of him and just having a thoughtful face.
I would recommend that you watch a movie called Idiocracy. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the dumbing down of the world. And it's a comedy, and it's meant to be a comedy. And it's based on somebody who has average intelligence who's frozen and comes back in a period where everybody has repeatedly said it's all about you only live once, you got to live now, you got to do this, you got to do this, and now he's the smartest person in the world.
Idiocracy.
Idiocracy. Yeah, totally worth it. You'll laugh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right, next question is gonna be, do you work for your team or does team work for you?
Yes.
Yes. What is that?
Yes. Yes means both.
Okay.
Because there are times that certain things need to get done, and you have skill sets and expertise within a team, and use the leader set that strategic vision. But as a leader, you have to ensure that the environment and the tools are available, and you have to help facilitate that. So to say it's one or the other, I think it's both.
Okay. So let's say we are in a group where a leader
Okay.
is not distinguished by someone higher up, and it does not say that Mr. Scott is going to be a leader in your group. How does leader come out? Like, is it a natural thing, or do you have to say, I'm going to be your leader? Or what's this process of becoming a leader when you're not told to be one?
It depends on the organizational structure. I mean, you've got different kinds of leaders. You've got emergent leaders, people who step up in given situations because of skill sets and talents. You have formal leaders that have been put in place by different levels of organizational leadership, saying this is the best person for it. You have formal and informal leaders, and it just depends on what the situation is. There have been organizations that I worked in where I was the formal leader, and there was no mistaking about that.
Mm-hmm.
People could look at my sleeve and say, yep, that's the boss, roger that. But there were certain situations, many situations, where if there was a task that was given, the task was literally just set on a desk for people to look at. And then I would sit back and see how they attacked the situation, how they resolved it, how they worked it out. You know, who stepped up and said, I got this one.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for people when they're willing to take this task, they'll recognize what the shortfalls are as far as resources or you name it. And they would come to me and say, hey, this isn't going to work because of this. And my response was always, oh, so you need me to do this. Yeah, could you do that? Got it.
How do you feel about leader taking orders from someone else?
We all take orders from people. You know what I mean? It's in how the order, when people hear the word taking orders or that phrase, they immediately think of the military or the cop saying, put your hands where I can see them. Orders can come in so many different fashions. I mean, if you look, you have orders every time you step inside a classroom. There are expectations, there are assignment deadlines, there are criteria. And as a student, you choose to either follow those orders or not follow those orders. An order is nothing but an executable behavior that meets a certain standard with an intended outcome. I get orders all the time. I get orders from students. Some of them are legal, some of them, and when I say legal, I'm using military vernacular, lawful and unlawful. There are times that students come up and they say, I have this issue. And by saying I have this issue, or I need to understand this, that is still a form of an order, because within my function as faculty here, it's my job to do my best to ensure that people understand stuff. If people are questioning and they don't understand, that to me is an order to tighten up the game, find another way to explain it, to make sure that learning is taking place. Yeah. So if a leader has a problem taking orders, they're not a very good follower, and that's problematic.
Yeah, I remember from your class, being a good leader means being a good follower, right? It's both of them at the same time. You have to be good at both.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's nicely put.
I remember something from your class. It's good, right?
You remember a lot more than you think you do.
Yeah. Hey, that's good. Okay. Yeah, actually, this is a great question. What advice would you give person who wants to be a project manager and just started career?
Somebody who wants to be a project manager, first of all, understand the process, because project management is very organized. Understanding what you're getting into, because when people talk about project management, there are different angles that people take to it. When I talk about it from the Project Management Institute, PMP sort of perspective. As a project manager, if you're not organized and you can't see the vision, then you're probably in the wrong job. So if somebody wants to be a project manager, they need to find out exactly what they're getting into. And that comes from researching what the process is, looking at what are considered acceptable norms, what the expected outcomes are, and be willing to sacrifice sleep, because project management, I'm not joking, is a full-time job, no joke.
Okay. If someone has never been a project manager or has never been in that field and wants to be there, how do they know what it is? How do they get a feeling? Is it for them or maybe it's not?
The first thing that I would offer for them to take a look at is I would go out to the Project Management Institute, it's pmi.org, and look at the different levels of certification and the expected processes. And what's crazy about project management is there's so many different areas of specialization now that the projects flow differently based on what enterprise you're in, if it's national or international, you name it. Like one of the challenges that I had as a project manager is dealing with different governments.
Yeah.
Trying to get parts in and out of different countries that have different relationships and different agreements and different expectations. I can't tell you how many times I lost sleep doing that stuff. So go out to the Project Management Institute and just look around to see what is out there.
Yeah.
So that they can start managing their own expectations.
Well, what's the thing? Nowadays, there are just, there's a person who is told, go build a bridge and you're going to be a manager, right? I'm not going to be able to do that because you need engineering degree. Maybe you need that. But project management nowadays developed into just kind of this universal term when you're just a manager, when you're a good leader. Do you think that's the reality and that's a correct reality where you cannot have a specific background in a job but still be a manager?
Yes and no. And I know that sounds like a trash non-committal answer, but there are people, like using the example that you have, knowing that you have a shortfall, that you're not an architect, that you're not a construction guy, but your expertise resides in the fact that you can manage a project. You know who to reach out to, you know what information you need. You're going to surround yourself with what's called a project management team. So you have to choose your experts. And based off of that, you oversee the bidding process, the enactment process, and then the validation process. Because engineers don't understand that process either. So the capability does exist. And project management is both leadership, but it's a lot more management because it's a lot more accountability. You're evaluating a process to make sure that timelines are met. If not, why not? Do you have the proper people, resources, plan? So I think you can. It's a little more challenging, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's connect Air Force with project management and leadership.
Okay.
What is going on there? What is the connection? What did they teach you? What it did not teach you, or maybe made something worse? Let's say.
It's interesting because the way that the way that it is constructed inside the Air Force, and I'll make sure that I stay well away from anything, is there's a thing called a career field education training plan. And you start at what is called a journeyman, actually an apprentice level, and you're trained by somebody who is much more proficient in a higher grade with expertise. And as you progress through the ranks, the higher you go, the more they expect you to learn additional things. One of the things when you become what's called a craftsman is project management. So by the time you get to being a frontline leader, what we call a staff sergeant, you have some sort of project management expertise. As you go up from there, they give you not just project management, but program management. So you have both ownership and oversight of the project.
Yeah.
It was a really good fit because I was fortunate enough to do it on a system that I was extremely familiar with. I mean, when I first started, I had heard about it, I had seen it, but the foundations were pretty much the same, but it was in an environment where I was fortunate enough to be successful for more than a hot minute. So stepping into it, there was a little bit of angst, a little bit of catching up to do when it came to system specifics. But the foundations for project management were already there.
Yeah.
The system peculiarities were there. And what was cool is they sent us through contracting school. So when you start going to contracting school, then you start learning a lot more about legal ramifications, accountability of funds. That was eye-opening.
Okay.
It was brutal too.
Okay. In Army, you learn discipline.
I sure hope so.
Correct. Do you think discipline is important for a leader?
Yes.
In what way?
Yes. Discipline is training designed to produce a desired result. When people typically hear the word discipline, they think of punishment, and it's not.
I do sometimes.
When you go, like if you're exercising, there are days that you don't want to exercise, but you still get out and you do it because you're trying to strengthen the muscles or strengthen your heart, open up your lungs, whatever it is you're trying to do. You hit what's called a plateau. You know, you get a flat line, and there's something that drives you to take one extra step, to do one extra rep, maybe put one extra pound on there, something inconsequential. But you're doing it so that as you're doing it, you're getting a specific form with a specific intended outcome. Discipline is nothing but that.
Yeah.
It is training designed to produce a desired output. And it helps with integrity because in the absence of somebody staring at you, that discipline is what says, this is the right thing to do. If you're a leader that is undisciplined and you're sloppy, and by sloppy, I don't mean like looking physically sloppy unless that's a requirement of the position. The challenge will exist that you will be unwilling or you'll face a challenge when it comes to making a tough decision. A disciplined leader is one that can say, at the end of the day, I can still see what that end state is, what that end goal is. And when the going gets tough, I'm going to dig down and make that happen because that is what I'm focused on. So yeah, discipline is huge.
So I caught something really cool. What you said is discipline helps you do what's right when there are no eyes looking at you or telling you what to do. Okay.
Absolutely.
I've never heard of that before, but that's kind of cool.
If you think about it, let me put it into something that may make a little more sense. When people take examinations, that if there's something that gets them stuck, you have a natural temptation to give one of these, let the eyes wander a little bit. But the disciplined person will sit back and say, okay, I know this information. Let me reattack and look at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
So it helps enact integrity and get you using that moral compass.
Do you think it's a skill?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I know a lot of undisciplined people that showed up on the first day of basic training, and they were not the same animal at the end of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And what was cool is some of those ladies and gentlemen that I saw that made it through basic training, if I ran across them like 10, 15 years later, they had not only retained that discipline, but they had developed it. So, and it's cool because a skill is something that you choose to develop. So there's that constant decision-making process. Do I want to do this? Yes. Why? Is this important? Yes. Why?
Okay.
And keep going.
Since we're talking about skills, I want to ask about skill of confidence. You agree it's a skill? First of all, let's start with that.
Confidence is a state. It's a trait, but can you learn to be confident? Yeah, absolutely.
What is the road to becoming confident?
It starts with, defining what you stand for and being willing to say it in an open forum. Confidence comes from the willingness to risk being wrong and learning from it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what we have now is we've got what I call this zero defect society. Either you're perfect or you're trash. And I categorically disagree with that. I don't know a single good leader that hasn't failed in some point and hasn't learned from it. The confidence comes from a belief in what you're doing is attached to something higher than yourself.
Yeah, so. It does. And it's so interesting. There has to be a reason behind why you feel confident in certain situations and then why you don't feel confident in certain situations, right? And how you act in that situations also really matters.
It's crazy because the environment plays a lot into it. Giving an example, when I was teaching Airman Leadership School, I was a full-time teacher, full-time instructor. I went to the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, and I had been used to training people in public speaking, doing all those different things. But when I was a student, the game was different. So I got up there, crushed the presentation.
Yeah.
Went over to the instructor. He gave me my grade. I said, "Thank you very much, sir. Request permission to adjust," which means, "Can I step outside for a moment?" He said, "Absolutely." I stepped outside, fell down to the floor, low crawled to the bathroom, and threw up in a urinal.
Really?
Yeah. And I was doing that full time. That was my gig. I was a military instructor teaching a similar curriculum, but the game was different. So it came, the confidence to complete that situation came from a few different things. First of all, promotion hung on it, but secondly, I needed to prove to myself that there's a reason that I'm allowed to get up in front of other people and do the same thing. And if I'm going to ask them to find confidence to stand up and make a speech, by God, I had better get on that horse and ride. And I've seen people that get up there for public speaking and they just break down. But that's cool. That happens. It's what you do the second time around that can define you.
Yeah.
Confidence can be learned.
I remember the first time I went on a stage to play piano. I was preparing to play the Beethoven's piece Moonlight Sonata for like such a long time, and in this everyday grind, I went on the stage. I'm sweating so bad, and every lights are just like 2 times brighter. And my heart is racing, and I sit down on the piano. I try to play, and I last like 20 seconds, and then my hands just start shaking, and I can't play anymore. And I just like stood up and left. It was an adventure.
I get it, man. I've been that guy too.
Yeah, but those are the things that makes us different in the end. If you never did it, where would you be now? Where would I be now? Right?
Exactly. And there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence comes from a belief. Arrogance is just over the top to where you've forgotten who you are as a person. And it's more important how people perceive you in the power play versus being confident enough to go out and do something.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Roger that.
It's going really well, right? I'm really enjoying the conversation. I'm learning a lot.
As am I. I appreciate this opportunity. This is cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm really interested in this question. When you are in a leadership position, how do you distinguish respect and friendship?
First of all, I've always had a problem with people saying that they want to be somebody's friend in a leadership position.
Okay.
And this is going to sound crazy. Everything in the military is like super written out, super codified. And we have an instruction that's called professional, unprofessional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And in that instruction, they clearly define that anything that a leader can do, anything that a leader does can be perceived as unprofessional when viewed from the perspective of, does it take away from the authority, the organizational outcomes, undermines the position. So there's like 4 or 5 different criteria. You can be friendly with somebody
Mm-hmm.
and still not be their friend. Professional environments are set up so that people recognize what their positions are. And they understand, more importantly, not just their position, but how important their position is and how it fits into a larger picture. You can tear into somebody. And when I say tear into somebody, I mean that in a loudly vocal disagreement, and still have respect for the person.
Yeah.
For some reason, there are different areas that they recommend people don't talk about: religion, politics, love, those kind of things. And by saying that, it has created a culture where people don't want to talk about it. And they've forgotten that you can talk to somebody about something that is an inflammatory item and do it from a respectful tone or a respectful position, to where you don't take away from that person's human dignity, and you can agree to disagree. I think we've forgotten how to do that. The bigger challenge is determining the difference between respectful and who is trying to be deviant and just, sort of kiss your butt to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Those people you can pretty much pick out straight away. You can respectfully disagree. You can do a lot of stuff and be respectful. And that's the cool thing about respect. And that's the difference between complaining or griping and thoughtful dissent. I have no issue going up to somebody and say, I disagree with you, but let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that, I tie it to larger organizational outcomes or expectations or values and say, and this is why.
Okay. Do you consciously make any type of decisions to stop a team member from becoming over friendly with you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a Department of Defense ethics regulation that I'm required to follow. And I say it like that. This goes back to discipline and integrity. I can choose to violate any law that's out there. I can. It's one of the cool things about free will. You can choose to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I choose not to, because I know the consequences of it. There are relationships, and I'll use the football team. I know people are sick to death of hearing me talk about the football team. That's okay. I'll buy them some Legos. They can build a bridge and get over it. People think that I favor them, and that's not truth. I have nothing but love and respect for the players, both the men and the ladies, just like I have nothing but love and respect for everybody else who's part of this place. But what tends to happen is when you have people that aren't part of that organization, they look at it from the outside and say, this person favors them. And that to me is a head scratcher, because that's sort of a maturity issue. And I wish that they would come talk to me, and then I can say that's not the case. When I see people who begin to take advantage of having conversations with me, or they start saying, they go beyond a customary bound of what our relationship is, yeah, I have no issue saying we're getting too close to a line that can be reasonably perceived to be undermining something.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to take a step back.
Okay.
And this is one of the things from that same document. It says that the leader is responsible for maintaining the professionalism of the relationship. Because who better to influence the situation other than the person who's in the leadership position? So yeah, I have no issue going.
Okay.
Or telling them to take a step back.
So you actually tell them to take a step back, or you just do it like some kind of action?
What I will do is I'll say, hey, we're entering into a ground that neither one of us should be in. This is what I'm seeing, and this is how it can be perceived on the outside.
Okay. So the best way to put boundaries in this case, you have to communicate somehow.
Oh, absolutely. Good God, yes.
Yeah. I think this goes even down to personal relationships and outside job relationships. You have to communicate. There is no other way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And let's look at it from this perspective. What happens if I come up to you or somebody else is doing something wrong, excuse me, and I try to correct them, but I've let somebody else that I have a professional relationship with get away with that? Where's my ground or my foundation for being able to correct that other person if I just let somebody else get away with it? So it goes back to that consistency and discipline and integrity. And if I truly care about people, I'm going to correct them regardless of who they are. I have a sort of a running joke that my wife is the smartest person that I know, but has the worst taste in men, and that all men are idiots, and she has married their king. Because I do silly stuff, my wife corrects me. She's like, hey, remember. And while I always heed what she says, sometimes it's after the fact. And then my 4-year-old comes around the corner and does it. And I just go,
yeah.
Yep, I'm owning that one for a hot minute.
That is so interesting, right? That is so interesting. Yeah, you stand for what you ask other people to do. You better be doing that yourself.
Absolutely. Goes back to integrity and discipline.
Yeah.
Don't just talk the talk. You've got to walk the walk.
Okay. Let's see what other topics we got to talk about. If I ask you to remember a story from military, just this question, will you be able to remember a story?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Any
story, yeah, whatever comes to your mind.
Any specific situation or any context that you want me to pull it out?
Okay, let's think. Well, we've been talking about the issues in team. So maybe something connected to when you had to resolve some kind of problem. And you distinguished your communication skills.
The military has a very specific vocabulary and a very specific vernacular. There are things that you can say in uniform that would not be acceptable outside of uniform, or depending on who you're talking to in, who they are inside the organizational chain. I always found it interesting talking to females, women.
Yeah.
And as strange as that sounds, women, and the women that worked with me, I'm not saying all women, because right now I can see people going, he's going to make a statement about gender. Mm-hmm. The women that worked for me were very specific in how they approached things. They were very meticulous in their word choice. If I said something that was even, 2 millimeters off target, mm-hmm. I knew that I would lose them. And what was nice about that, I had a lady that worked for me, and she was amazing. I'm not going to say her name just because I don't want to put her name out there. She used to get a lot of flack from some people.
What's that?
Flak is like shrapnel, stuff that comes from bombs. It's like a military term for she would get a hard time. And because she was in a specialty that was predominantly men. Mm-hmm. And there was one situation where there was an officer that I worked for, and I'd sent this female airman that worked for me to go up to a maintenance meeting. And the airman went up there and she did fantastic, which I had no doubts that she would. But the person who called down was extremely upset with me that I had sent a low-ranking woman up to there to represent our work center. Mm-hmm. And after that person was done losing her mind on the phone, I asked this very simple question. Excuse me, ma'am. Did she or did she not represent the work center? Well, yes. Okay. Next question. Did she do it well or poorly? Well, she did it extremely well, but, and that's when I said, ma'am, every time you say but, you're negating every statement that you said before that. So what I heard is that she went up there, she represented the work center, and she did it extremely well. So let's get to the crux of the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
That lady, that when she came back, she was a little bit flustered, a little bit shaken because she got dressed down.
Mm-hmm.
She got talked to for being up there. So when that lady came back into the work center, she said, I never want to do that again. And I smiled and said, that's exactly why you're going to do it next week. She said, that person didn't want me there. I said, yeah, but we need you there and we believe in you.
Great.
So yeah, that was cool. I mean, there's a ton of other.
Yeah, I'm sure there are so
stories.
many stories you can tell. Just really endless. It's just I asked the question in a little bit weird way.
That's okay. It's all good.
Yeah.
You can ask it again and I can give you a retake.
Nah, it's all good. It was a great story. Okay, let's move on maybe to the now let's ask questions and you will have 1 minute to answer them. What? No, I said 1 minute? No, 1 sentence, my bad. Not 1 minute.
Roger that.
All right. These are the questions that were suggested by people. I picked the best ones and there were some questions that really you don't want to hear. But okay. What kind of business Scott would open right now and why?
Black Rifle Coffee Company, coffee shop in Klaipeda. The reason why is because I need my coffee and it takes forever. Best coffee in the world.
All right. Next question.
Hands down.
How much time is needed to become a true leader?
A lifetime.
How did the skills gained from Air Force help you in managerial career?
It taught me structure, discipline, the importance of identifying yourself with a higher purpose and aligning your behavior with those outcomes.
You got it. Why did he decide to join Army?
Believe it or not, I made my decision to join the military when I was 12.
12.
12 years old. I have a document that shows that when I was a Boy Scout that I wanted to be in the military. I had a rough patch for a couple of years where I began behaving like a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, I come from a long line of military folks. I'm the only one that made it to retirement, though. I'm the only one that gutted out for the whole career.
Okay.
So.
Next question. What challenges it took to create team at LCC? Football team, I guess they mean.
Dr. Wall was receptive straight away because there was a team.
There was.
There was. They were called the Kicks. The challenge with formalizing it was because I was the first one that sought to formalize it. So anytime you enact a new organization, there's always going to be a bit of change associated with that. Actually, the biggest challenge was getting people to realize that if they wear the uniform, that emblem, that logo means more than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That when they get out on that pitch, that's more important than how good they look if they're a highlight reel. So that was the hardest thing, was getting people to stop playing for themselves and start playing for an organization.
Okay. Why Tottenham Hotspur?
Oh, we suck so bad right now. I'm so ashamed of us. Did you see us? We got spanked in freaking Zagreb.
I
it's
did
awful.
not see it, but why them?
I've always loved the underdog. Like, my German team is First FC Kaiserslautern, and they also suck. They're terrible. They're in the process of probably falling out of the third Bundesliga. I remember watching them when they had like Miroslav Klose, the all-time goal-scoring genius of the German national team.
Yeah.
I like the Hotspur because there's something scrappy about them. There's nothing pretty about them. They're not a finesse team, but they get out there, and right now they're just a mid-tier team.
Yeah.
But I dig the way that they play intentionally. Win or lose, and maybe not even as a team, there's a few players on there that will play intentionally every time they step foot on the pitch, and they remember why they play. So, I mean, you don't see a lot of the guys on the Spurs out there trying to get their names on cleats. They just want to play the game. And it's been like that for a while. So yeah, come on, you Spurs, quit sucking, please.
Okay, if you had to drink, I'm so excited for this question. If you had to drink something besides coffee for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Coffee.
You can't drink coffee. What else are you gonna drink?
Jolt.
Jolt?
Yeah, Jolt is a soda. It's like a Coke that you can get in the United States, and it's twice the caffeine, or twice the sugar, 3 times the caffeine. And it's called Jolt, and it's got like a lightning bolt through it, because after you drink it, you're like, nyang, 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 nyang. So yeah, if you take away my coffee, which if you want to find out what a military guy can do, how resourceful we are, try and hide my coffee. See how well that plays out.
If people don't know, Mr. Scott drinks a lot of coffee, and the specific one.
Black Rifle.
Okay. Single most important advice for a young beginner leader.
Don't be afraid to fail and remain true to yourself. Live for something higher.
Okay.
And integrity matters.
Integrity matters. We'll remember that phrase after this conversation for sure.
Uh-huh.
You achieved something right now.
I appreciate that.
How do you think
that's my one?
How do you think successful business will look like in the future?
I'm hoping that it's going to start following the path that it's beginning to go down, where it focuses on triple bottom line, where people come first, then planet, then profit. A successful business will be something that's sustainable and takes into things from a more holistic perspective, and not just money.
Not just money. Okay. Serving something higher than yourself. That's where you go back.
Roger that.
Okay. What is the most challenging question that someone has asked you?
The most challenging?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why anything is always the most challenging, because it makes you justify or explain, apply logic to what it is you just told them to do.
Yeah. Why football?
Yeah. Because I love it.
I just asked you a why question.
The reason I love football, and that's cool, and football is probably the most popular sport in the world. And that's not to take away from these other sports. I mean, I grew up in Southern California, where football is called soccer, and it's not as popular as like American football, basketball, baseball. You know, I think even swimming is more popular than soccer where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it because you can do it anywhere. All you need is a ball. I mean, heck, we used to take up like paper cups and jam them inside. So we had this squashed up paper cup that became our ball.
Yeah.
And you can play it anywhere. And it didn't matter who wanted to come in and play. Everybody was welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Did he have any regrets, disappointments serving for the USA Air Force?
I think that people who don't have disappointments are probably not being true. Do I have any regrets? Not a single one. Do I have disappointments? Yeah. When you look at somebody and you realize that you have provided as much assistance and support and opportunities, and they still make the choice to go against it, and you watch them fail to the point where they can no longer be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is always a disappointment, because you're always going to have time constraints. So yeah, I've had more than my fair share of disappointments.
Okay. How do I grow as a leader when I have to start at the bottom of the totem pole in company? I don't know what totem pole means, but maybe you do.
A totem pole, and this is what's funny. A totem pole is a Native American. It's a pole that's carved out of wood,
mm-hmm.
and people tend to believe that the face at the top of the totem pole is the highest. It's actually not true. It's the one that's at the bottom. But if you say that you're starting at the bottom of the totem pole, that means that you have to climb all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Everything that you do is a leadership opportunity, even as a follower, because as a follower, you see things from a different vantage point that a leader may overlook.
Yeah.
Developing your leadership comes from the willingness to say what needs to be said in a manner in which it can be received. Presenting those options to a leader.
Wait, say that again, please. It was really quick and really good.
Oh, my bad. Leadership opportunities from a follower's perspective can happen whenever, because a leader or a follower sees a situation differently than a leader does.
Mm-hmm.
And the willingness to walk up and say what needs to be said to a leader that may have overlooked something is a leadership opportunity.
Okay.
It's you're developing your communication skills, your confidence, your ability to provide feedback and provide options.
Yeah.
So even at the bottom, or how people perceive to be the bottom, there's still leadership opportunities. And sometimes, guess what? You can lead yourself by working on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a bit mystifying to me. And I know that this is probably going past the time. When I was in the military, it used to drive me crazy when people would not take out their own trash. Like, the trash can's right out there. Well, we have cleaning service, or it's this person's job to do it. Well, it's right next to your leg. So
yeah,
do me a favor.
People in dorms will relate.
That to me is absolutely mind-boggling. And that's a discipline opportunity. Senior, I'm out. I got the trash. Thank you.
Okay.
Because every Saturday and every Sunday, working on mid-shift, I was the highest ranking person in there, and I still swept and mopped.
Mm-hmm.
Because it needed to be done. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So
cool. How do you have a life out of work and thrive as leader?
It's cool because there's that concept of work-life balance. It comes from knowing when to say no.
Okay. So ability to say no.
Yep. And then justifying it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. What are okay, not that question. What are 3 characteristics of a great leader? We probably talked about so many, but if you can summarize again.
Integrity, just 3?
Yeah, just 3.
That sounds like one of those leadership philosophies. I'm going to sell you these top 3, and for that, you will be an instant wonderful leader. I don't think that there are 3 top ones. I think that they're all equally important.
Yeah.
And I think that the number goes beyond 3. If forced to choose,
mm-hmm.
integrity, honesty, and discipline.
Okay. Well, I hope this will be useful for a person who asked this question. What is the best way to delegate work in a team?
Delegation comes after you validate that people have the skill sets and the capabilities to do it. So the best way to do it is ensure that whoever you're choosing,
mm-hmm.
that you as a leader, when you delegate it,
yeah,
that those people feel empowered, and you constantly remind yourself, if they fail, that's my bad. I'm still accountable.
Okay. That's super. That's so interesting. So you have to be sure that they can do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or they will probably be really frustrated.
Yep. And if they fail, you have to be willing to shoulder that. You have to be accountable for that.
Yeah. Okay. And last question: What are going to be the top 3 skills in workforce for the upcoming 10 years?
Top 3 for the next 10 years. First one will be digital literacy.
Uh-huh.
And when I say digital literacy, I don't mean going out there and blowing up Facebook or using social media and all that stuff. That is one microcosm of it.
Mm-hmm.
Digital literacy goes well beyond that. Emotional intelligence would be the second one. The ability to know yourself and read a room and read other people and understand that what you say and what you do will be picked up and understood in a certain way. So emotional intelligence. And the third one. In the business environment?
Yeah.
I would like to say integrity, but that seems to be all over the place. For a business to be sustainable and legit, I'm going to go with integrity. Because if you create a business that's founded on something, and provides provides a service or product to a legitimate need, you don't have to be a multimillionaire to do that. So, but if you're doing something that's principled and continues to develop people and support them, I think that would be, I firmly believe that would be something important for people to be successful in business.
Yeah.
You see all these people that make terrible decisions that, they do stupid things. I'm not saying that they're stupid people, they do stupid things. And so they find their way out of business. They're easily replaceable by somebody else who's willing to do stupid things. But it's those businesses that have integrity, that serve something more than just making money, that are out there every day making magic happen. So those would be the three: emotional intelligence, digital literacy, and integrity.
Okay. Well, Mr. John Milliken, in the last first episode and the last one, left you a question.
Thanks, John. Good looking out.
And this question was actually to ask me one question, which is a little weird, but it's still what it is. So you have to ask me one question. Yeah.
I got a question for you. Actually, I do have a question for you. And thanks, John, for the opportunity. Why 14 questions? What made you come up with this?
So for past 3 years, I have been interviewing people behind the curtain. And just asking life-related questions to know their perspective about different things, philosophical questions like what is meaning of life, how do they see it, like what's their subjective opinion, etc. And after filtering out all the questions, I was left with 14 most important ones. That's why 14 questions.
Cool. Can I ask you one more?
Please.
What do you stand for?
Yeah, you're putting me on a place now. Okay. I'm not stressing out. I'm gonna tell you. What do I stand for? I stand for truth. In a literal way and in a illiteral way. I think damaging reality by saying something that's not true is one of the worst things you can do. Yeah, it's really, when you put out a reality that does not exist, you never know who is going to walk through that reality and what expectations they're going to have. So you better not do that. Or you will also be in that situation once and you won't like it.
That's a good thing to stand for.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question.
My pleasure. Thank you for answering it.
Yeah. Why don't you leave a question for my next guest? We don't know who it's going to be though.
What do you stand for?
What do you stand for? Let's do it.
Yep. Let's see if we can get people publicly proclaiming what they're about.
Yeah. Let's do it. All right.
Starts here. You and I rock that role.
Yeah, I will make sure to ask that question. All right. Any concluding remarks, suggestions?
I just want to say thanks, because this is a super, I don't want to sound like that person. This is a cool thing. Because what we're having right now is honest dialogue. And, one of the things that I appreciate is when I told you straight up, these are the areas that I'm not going to touch. We're not going to sniff around them. You were still open to that. You were very respectful in how you shaped those things to keep me away from those. So this kind of honest discourse on some of the questions that are a little bit tougher is what is missing in many forms of dialogue. So if somebody tells you what you're doing is wrong, feel free to tell them I categorically disagree with that statement, and they can come talk to me in room 226 because I would love to have that conversation.
I love you. I love you so much for that. Thanks.
So keep your head up and your shoulders down, press forward. I got your back on this.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And it's our goal for the audience to learn maybe one sentence more. If they just leave this one sentence more. No, wait, what did I just say? If they leave this place knowing one sentence more, I'm happy.
And this is a great platform for it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
All
You're
right.
doing a good thing here, man.
All right. Thank you so much. This is the end, and I will see you later.
Roger that. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. I and Scott Stewart thank you for listening and watching second episode of Podcast 14 Questions. Follow my socials so you can get a chance to suggest question I'm gonna be asking my next guest. And there will be bloopers in the end.
I'm recording this shit.
No, there is apparently some kind of line here. And when it gets stressed, it's like, but when you... It's really working, I think. So I feel so different now.
Are you done with your...
But if you do like 1 finger, then 2 fingers, then 3, then 4, and if you're really stressed... Thank you all for watching, and this is blooper episode number 3001. Here, it's 2021, but there, it's 3001. How is it going? Good? Me too.